Hi, I'm Chris, and this is my simple and portable mitre saw stand. It's based on a DEWALT stand, and these beams give it an extra 2.2 metres of solid support at either end. Over here, we have dovetail slots for the MicroJig clamps and also a stop block. So I'll show you how this connects to the stand. So this is basically the box section, the back of the box section and the top of it here. Basically it's just built to the height of the saw. So the saw including the little clips that hold it onto the stand. So then it's all a nice flush, level, continuous beam. What I've done here is that hole and this big hole. If I flip it over so you can see. So this is the back of it here and this is the bottom. So these are little clips that you get from DEWALT that come on their saw stand to fit the little end bits on, the little supports. So what I did is I ordered a few of these, and I think they're like 60p or something like that each. So I ordered 4 of these, so that's 2 for each side. And what I do is I put the product code in the description so you can obviously find them. So they do spin, it can be a bit tricky to get in, but once they're in, they are okay. This is the front one that goes near the saw, and I put a little block there just to help it stop spinning, but it doesn't really make too much of a difference because you've got to feed it in anyway. I mean, it's portable. They can be a little bit fiddly, as I said, but once they're set up, you're ready to go and they're brilliant. So this big hole here is basically so I could feed the screw from the top and hold it as I do it. So in there, hopefully you can see it. There's a screw, and then when I connect this to the stand in a bit, you'll see exactly what I do. I just basically get a screwdriver down the top and turn it, and then it tightens, and you don't need extra supports. As you can see there on that one, I'm in the middle of doing stuff to it at the moment, but that is just held up with the extendable part of the stand, and it's perfectly level. You don't need like a sawhorse or support stand on the end. They just stay flat. Right, so hopefully you can see this okay, because I'm doing it freehand and it's quite dark. So there's the clip. So this is obviously the bar that slides into the clamp, stand, sorry. So I'll slide that on so it's straight. And then I've got a screw in the top. And that goes down like that. And then this end, we've got the same thing. We want to slide it up. So you can see it's the DEWALT bolt has sat in there and slid up through that bit. And now it's going to clamp down to there, and that will level it all off. So that's all nice and flat now. So all we do next is over here and tighten our clamps there, and it pulls both of these into level, or parallel anyway. Tighten that one. Now we have a solid base, which we'll just come back here. So you can see, nice and straight. So now you know how these connect to the stand. I'm going to show you how these are constructed, these beams. So if you'll come over with me to the drawing board, I'll show you. Right, so we're going to look at how to construct the beams now. And bearing in mind, this all comes from one sheet of plywood. So basically that's going to be one of these beams. So the distance we got here for the depth of it is 200 millimeters. The reason for 200 millimeters is because the saw, as it swings round for the mitres, it won't hit. Otherwise, you might have seen this a bird's eye view. You know, people have to sort of notch that corner out like that there, to avoid it hitting. But with this, you don't need to. It's just really simple. That's what I've tried to do, is just make it as simple as possible. The height for that, including obviously both sheets of, both lengths of ply, so the total height needs to be from this top bed of the saw to the top bed of the stand. So that's 125 millimeters for the height. The length of it, obviously, you can build it at any length you want, but for me, I've done it at 2.2 meters. That's purely because I can't get 2.4 meters in the van. I can get a sheet in the van because it has to tuck just slightly between the seats. This won't fit between the seats. So I've done it at 2.2. But if you drive a car or you drive like a minivan, then you can make it even shorter. So that's 2.2 meters there. So when you add up all the totals of the widths to obviously rip out of your sheet, you can get it all out of one sheet of plywood. So what I've done in the middle, imagine this hasn't got a top on it at the moment, is I've just put a couple more bits of the end cut out bit inside, just to give it that sort of skeleton structure. So because of that, it doesn't need any extra stands at the end, because that beam is just solid. So what I have done, obviously, as I've shown you, is on the stand, I pulled the supports out, tighten those, and it holds it. But if you did go longer than 2.2 by joining, you know, you have to obviously go from more than one sheet of plywood if you went over 2.4. But if you extended them and had them even longer, which you could do, you could have them 6 meters long if you wanted, but it would mean that you'd have to then have some kind of sawhorse or something underneath it to keep it in line. So with that, obviously you don't need to do that. So that's basically all there is to it. It's very simple. It's just a box, skeleton type structures. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 end bit, or you could actually just have one in the middle and have 3. It depends how much offcuts you've got. So there's not really much else to it really. It really is a simple design, cheap design, one sheet of plywood, and then obviously if you want to go for the extra clamps, I put a link in the description, and also for the stop blocks. Also in the description, I'm going to put the link and the part number to the little DEWALT locking brackets. They're only a quid, 60p, something like that, I can't remember now, but not very expensive. So you need 4 of those to connect 2 stands. So to make the little dovetail grooves for the clamps or the little jigs, first of all, it's advised to make a relief cut, just to protect the cutter basically and stop it from getting worn out so quick. I mean, it goes through this really cheap plywood quite easily and through MDF quite easily. Through hardwood, you definitely want to make the relief cuts, but I'm going to make them anyway so I can show you how to set that up. So you've got this little guide here that comes with the kit, and what it's got there is the height of the dovetail cutter and the height of the blade or the straight flush cutter, whatever you're using to make your relief cuts. Like I say, you don't actually have to make the relief cuts, but it is a lot safer if you do. So basically you just stick this, I'm doing it with a track saw. Obviously if you were using a router, you do it differently. So you'd put your saw on the top, place that flush on the bottom, and then you want to line it up, get the blade down into that groove there, like so. So once you've done that and got that set up, you obviously want to put your marking out on this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a dovetail along the back edge to use a little stop block I made, although I'm going to make a better one than this. But So that's basically a little stop block there. As you undo it, you slide that through and then tighten it up. Very simple, that all comes in the kit. So in that kit you get, I think it's about 4 or so of these. You get a little bag there, a few nuts and bolts, some little thumb screws so you can make some jigs. You get the cutter, which is in the router at the moment, you'll see shortly. 2 of these clamps, and then that setup piece. So we want to obviously mark this out. So I'm just basically going to mark it what I've done on the other one because I've started doing that one. And I don't want to change the setting of the router, that's why I'm doing this now. So I've got 20 millimeters from the back edge. And then I'm doing a 50 millimeters at this end, and you'll see what that's for shortly. Well, it's actually for scribing skirting boards. I don't do too many skirting boards because, you know, I make kitchens and furniture really, but, you know, the amount of customers that say to me, oh, you know, I'm pleased with your work. Do you want to do some skirting and hang a door? And I say, well, I don't really do that, but I'm happy to do a bit, you know, but it usually ends up doing the whole house, to be honest. And then I think I did it 100 millimeters from the edge to the center. Yep, because it's 200 millimeters wide this. So I'm just doing a center one. Do a couple of marks here. And that's that. So next, I want to get the rail on. Oop, knock everything over. Obviously line the rail up with my marks. This is just going to be a quick score line, which is obviously set to the depth on there, so the same depth as the dovetail, just as a relief cut. And I'm going to do that there. I'm going to do it along the center one, and I'm going to do a quick one on the end one as well. Right, so obviously make sure it's lined up with the 2 lines at either end. Get the old ear defenders on, and make sure that's not rocking. That's sitting nice and flush. So I've already set the depth for this, so I'm just going to run this through quickly. So hopefully you can see it there on the camera. I should have had my goggles on, which I'll put them on for the next cut. Obviously, you do forget about these things. When you do this every day, it is hard to forget, you know, even if you get in a habit of it. When you start filming stuff as well, you're thinking more about the filming than the actual, well, for me anyway, because I'm just started out with this YouTube stuff. So, I'll go find my goggles. Which are right here by the table saw. There you go. We're going to make another quick score cut along there. So as I was saying, set the router up. You've got the dovetail bit in here. And then you use the dovetail part of this jig, and then you get it in line with the top of the cutter. So you just use the micro adjustment on the router, which on mine, it's there. And I've already adjusted that because I've done the other one over there. You just set it to that right there. I'm not going to plunge this in, I'm going to have it just clamp like that and then run it through from the edges, just because obviously you can't really plunge it in anyway because you want it to come from the edge so you can slide the clamp in. So we're just going to quickly run this along here. So I made a bit of a wobbly line there, but what I need to do anyway is just sand, because it makes all these fluffy bits. I don't know if you can see on the camera there. Obviously, because this is just cheap plywood, so I need to sand them anyway. So just make it run a bit smoother. So I try and tidy up this bit here, which isn't very straight. And I made another little bit up there. It's just where it runs off as the fence is running there, and the fence is in two parts. It just drops a millimetre like that and makes a wiggly line. So ideally what you want to do is have a fence set up that works both sides and you guide the router through it, but I haven't got one yet. But we could do that in another video. Right, so let's see if this works. So there's our clamp. Slides all the way along. And then let's try our stop block that we made with this little green plastic thing. That goes in okay. And then obviously you want to tighten it down. That's going nowhere. We do the same with a clamp. We just grab a scrap of wood and we clamp it down and see how it holds. So it just slides in like that. That's solid. Now you don't need to worry too much about these. Obviously, if you were to pull up on this, it could break on the edges, but the dovetail cutter does actually have a little roundover on the cutter when you buy MicroJig's own dovetail cutter, which I got, which comes in this set. But if you use your own, obviously it doesn't do a roundover, so you just have to put a little one on with the sandpaper. But the difference between this and T-Track is, can you just imagine how much it would cost to do? This is 2.2, so you need 2 lengths of 1200 of T-Track per line. So that'd be, so 2.4 meters on this side and then 2.4 meters on the other side. You know, it's 4.8 meters, and I'm not sure the price. I think for 1200, you're looking at like sort of £20 each. So you're looking at well over 100 quid just for T-Track, and that's the problem with T-Track. It is expensive. The cutters are not so good though. You can get T-Track cutters that do similar sort of thing to this, but what happens is at the top of the T, I'll draw it on the screen now, but it can snap at the top when you put pressure on it. So to be honest, this is a lot better system, and I'm pleased with it so far. So I'm just going to router the other grooves, and then we'll go from there. So a little bonus tip, I just bought one of these, or 2 of these actually, off of Amazon. These little stop blocks, flip stops. Obviously it slide along the channel there, but they're built for T-Tracks. But what I've discovered, if I get this out of the way. So there's the little temporary one that I made earlier. So these green bits you get in the kit with the MicroJig clamps. What we can do with this, if you can't use it that way up, when that was on there, with that T-slot bit. So you see that red there at the bottom, that was in line to keep it level. You can't do that now because it'll just tip to an angle like so, and you don't want that because it means that depending whereabouts your wood, if you've got a thin bit of wood, it's going to be different to if you're doing a thicker bit of wood. So flip it upside down. So you've got a nice flat bottom there. And use that, so I'll just slide it on. There we have it, a nice secure track stop. Flip it out of the way when it's not in use, and then when you need to use it, you move it along. I'll just move your camera a minute. So what happens now is obviously you can cut whatever piece to length, and you want to make repeatable cuts. So you cut, say that's cut to length, and you want to make some more at that size, flip that down, and you've got a stop block. Now I've got one for each side, and when you're not using it, you flip it out of the way, and then you can move it up and down for whatever size piece you want to cut. Obviously you could stick a tape measure along here if you wanted to, but then you've got to obviously line it up perfectly here every time, and if you change the blade, then you've got to move the tape measure if the blade's not exactly the same kerf. So why haven't I put a fence along the back of these? Well, it's pointless really. I'll tell you why, because a lot of people do that. They put a fence along the back. But you don't need a fence 2 meters down that end. You only need it to be square here at the saw. You know, just this little bit here is fine. As long as that's square, your cut there be square. And the thing is as well, is if you buy rough material that's sort of bent like a banana, you can only do it one way, because if you've got the fence on there, you can't cut it bowing inwards like that. It's got to bow out. So it really is pointless. And I've seen a lot of mitre stations people build, especially here on YouTube, and I think a lot of people are more going for this kind of thing now, just a stop block either through the middle or a flip stop at the back. And this to me really is a good idea, having that at the back, out of the way, and then when you need it, flip it down.